We were passionate about helping women. We wanted them to be protected. And we wanted to create a revolution. We wanted to make history. This was the first organization where women were becoming activists. My name is Yasmin. I'm from London. I grew up in Derby. That was a time when I was in foster care due to the fact that both of my parents had divorced. I stayed with this family for the next 14 years. Unfortunately, during my years being with this particular family, I went through so much abuse and I was put into foster care again. Now, the abuser actually denied some of the stuff that he did to me. My case was going to court when I was 15 years old, and eventually, they dropped the case because they said there was not enough evidence. The upsetting point in my life at that time, being a 15-year-old, is when you're not believed. And I think this was a time when I questioned about, myself, and I even started doubting myself. Unfortunately, there was a point in my life where I did attempt suicide because I'd given up. You wonder who's out there for you. You're not believed. Eventually, when I met my husband, I settled down. I saw him that he was quite practicing, in Islam, and I started researching about Islam. I was very much attracted to Abu al-Madudi's Fundamentals of Islam, which really addressed, simple things in life, how we tackle like black magic or superstitions, and we really need to go straight to the direct connection with God, and we don't need all these talisman or anything, just go straight to him, which is probably one of the main reasons why I then took into the direction of joining the other extremist group, was the fact that in an Islamic state, for which they called, you would have a judicial system where you would bring your perpetrator to justice. So imagine I was not believed, and all of a sudden there's this great state that we need to now work towards, and therefore my perpetrator would be brought to justice. In 1996, we saw genocide taking place in Bosnia, and then we also saw the influx of Somali refugees. And I started waking up to the fact that yes, the Muslim countries are being attacked. And because I felt the injustices that was done towards me, I could empathize then with the Muslim Ummah, as you would say. This is when we then formed our women's group. The whole purpose was to become the voice, the eyes and the ears of the Muslims. The verse that was drummed into us was Surah 3, verse 104. Let there arise amongst you group or groups, calling society to the good and forbidding evil, and those shall be the successful ones. This verse stood out to us because we felt that we have now become God's representatives, and therefore it was our duty now to work towards establishing the Islamic State. Whenever you join a new group, everything is so hunky-dory, you get on with all the sisters, but then you see that things are not always rosy. You see the personality problems, you see the power trip that takes place, you see the exploitation. And spiritually, we found eventually that we were dying. We just started questioning about, well, what is Islam about? And studying about the Prophet, peace be upon him, and looking at what we were implementing over here, or how we were interacting with the public, was totally different. My father's friend, who's the lecturer at a university, is a philosopher, and he questioned me about how and when we get the Islamic State, what would we do? How would we build it? Again, I was stuck. It was all rosy to have these great pictures in your head. He then said to me, he said, I've read about the Prophet, peace be upon him. He was an ambassador for all humankind. The way you young people are carrying his message is, on the contrary, it's full of violence and it's full of hate. It's not what the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, taught. And he was right. I couldn't fault him for that. And he said to me one thing. He said, I've heard this great scholar say that Islam is known for its dominions and not for its domination. It's not to dominate. And that's when slowly but surely the bubble was bursting. Once we have taken the veil of prejudices out, away from our eyes, that's when we will be able to see humanity again. And that's why I say to a lot of people that whenever someone comes to dictate, you have the right to challenge them. Because remember, one day we're going to be questionable to the one above.